The Valerian Empire stretched across 3 galaxies like a blanket of stars. For 10,000 years, it had been ruled by something called the Sentinel Crown. This wasn't just some fancy hat made of gold and jewels. No, this crown was alive in its own way. It could think. It could choose. And most importantly, it decided who would lead the greatest empire the universe had ever known. When the old emperor finally passed away after ruling for 3 centuries, something terrible happened. The crown went completely dark. It sat on its pedestal in the grand throne room, lifeless and cold, like a light bulb that had burned out. According to the ancient laws written thousands of years ago, the crown had to pick a new ruler. Candidates from every corner of the empire had to present themselves, and the crown would glow brightly for the one it chose. Simple enough, right? Wrong. 2 months passed. Over 5,000 candidates had stood before the crown. Warriors who could crush steel with their bare hands. Telepaths who could read minds across star systems. Ancient beings who had lived for millennia and held wisdom beyond imagination. Nobles from the most powerful families. Scientists who had discovered new dimensions. Every single one of them approached the crown with confidence, certain they would be chosen. Every single one of them was rejected. The crown stayed dark. The Valerian Council met day after day in their towering chamber, and with each passing week, their voices grew louder and more desperate. Without a ruler, everything was falling apart. Trade ships stopped moving between planets because no one had authority to approve the routes. Pirates attacked merchant vessels because the Imperial fleet had no one to give them orders. At the borders of the Empire, old enemies watched and waited, seeing weakness for the first time in centuries. Some systems were already talking about breaking away and forming their own governments. "The crown is dying," whispered some of the council members in dark corners. "The age of the Valerian Empire is over." Others refused to believe it. "Bring more candidates. Someone from the outer worlds. Someone we haven't tested yet. The crown will choose. It must choose." Far below the council chambers, in the lower levels of the massive imperial palace, life went on as usual for the workers and servants. They scrubbed floors, fixed broken machinery, and kept the palace running while the powerful people above argued about the fate of the universe. Among these workers was a young woman named Katie Morgan. She was human, which meant she was nobody special in the grand scheme of the empire. Humans had only joined the galactic community about 40 years ago. Before that, they didn't even know aliens existed. They were still figuring out how to travel between stars when other species had been doing it for millions of years. Most aliens saw humans as primitive and overly emotional. They lived such short lives, barely a century if they were lucky. They had no telepathic powers, no enhanced strength, no natural armor or weapons. They were just soft, fragile beings who somehow managed to survive on their little blue planet through sheer stubbornness. Katie had come to the palace as part of something called the Labor Exchange Program. Basically, Earth sent workers to different parts of the empire to learn and earn money to send back home. She had volunteered because her family needed the credits. Her mom was sick, and her younger brother Tommy was just starting school. The medical bills were piling up. So Katie packed a bag, said goodbye, and took a transport ship halfway across the galaxy to become a maintenance worker in the Imperial Palace. Her days were long and tiring. She fixed heating systems in the massive corridors. She cleaned floors in rooms bigger than her entire apartment back on Earth. She replaced light panels and repaired ventilation units. Most of the aliens in the palace didn't even look at her. To them, she was just part of the background like the furniture. She didn't mind too much. The work was honest and she was helping her family. Plus, she got to see things no one from her neighborhood back in Ohio would ever believe. Alien species from 100 different worlds. Technology that seemed like magic. Gardens that grew plants from planets she couldn't even pronounce the names of. One evening, after another long day, Katie received orders from her supervisor. Report to the throne room. They just finished another selection ceremony. Need it cleaned before morning. Katie grabbed her supplies and headed up. She had been to the throne room a few times before, always after hours when it was empty. It was the most beautiful room she had ever seen, with walls that seemed to be made of captured starlight and a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness above. When she arrived, a handful of palace guards were still there, standing watch over the crown. It sat on its pedestal in the center of the room, dark and silent. Katie felt sorry for it in a weird way. It looked lonely. She got to work, moving quietly so she wouldn't disturb the guards. She swept the floors where thousands of feet had walked that day. She polished the railings. She emptied the waste containers. Just another job, she thought. She was carrying her bucket of dirty water toward the exit when she had to pass near the crown's pedestal. She wasn't really paying attention, thinking about the message she wanted to send to Tommy later. She wanted to hear about his soccer game. That's when it happened. The crown erupted in brilliant golden light. Katie dropped her bucket. Water spilled across the polished floor. Every guard in the room spun around, weapons suddenly in their hands. Alarms started blaring. And the crown, the ancient sentinel crown that had rejected 5,000 candidates, blazed like a newborn star. All because a human cleaning girl had walked past it. Within minutes, the throne room filled with people. Council members rushed in wearing their sleeping robes. Guards formed a circle around Katie, who stood frozen in place, still holding her mop. The crown continued to glow, pulsing with golden light that filled the entire chamber. Some of the aliens had to shield their eyes because it was so bright. Katie's hands were shaking. She had no idea what was happening. One moment she was just doing her job, the next moment she was surrounded by the most powerful beings in the Empire, all of them staring at her like she had just grown a second head. Lord Valen, the head of the council, pushed through the crowd. He was a tall creature with purple skin and 4 arms, wearing robes covered in medals from a dozen wars. He looked at Katie, then at the crown, then back at Katie. His face showed complete confusion. "This is impossible," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The crown chose a human? A maintenance worker?" Another council member, Lady Thane, stepped forward. She looked like she had been carved from blue crystal, and her voice sounded like wind chimes. "The crown has spoken. We must follow the ancient law. This human must be crowned as our new empress." "Absolutely not." Lord Valen's voice turned angry. "Humans are barely more than children in the galactic community. They have no telepathic abilities, no enhanced strength, no wisdom of centuries. They live for what, 80 years? 90 if they're lucky? How can such a creature rule an eternal empire?" The council erupted in arguments. Some insisted the crown's choice must be honored. Others refused to even consider it. Katie stood in the middle of all this chaos, feeling smaller and more scared with each passing second. She wanted to say something, to tell them this was all a mistake, but her voice wouldn't work. Finally, a large alien with 6 eyes and skin like stone slammed his fist on the floor. The entire room shook. "Enough. Lord Valen is right. The crown has malfunctioned. We will conduct more tests. We will find candidates from the outer systems, beings we have not yet considered. We will discover the true heir." His name was Lord Dravik, and he was the most powerful military commander in the Empire. When he spoke, people listened. "Take the human to a holding chamber," he ordered the guards. "Keep her comfortable but guarded. We will sort this out." 2 guards grabbed Katie's arms, not roughly but firmly enough that she knew she couldn't refuse. They led her through corridors she had never seen before, up elevators that moved so fast her stomach felt funny, and finally into a room that was bigger than her entire family home back on Earth. The door sealed behind her with a hiss. Katie stood there in her dirty work uniform, surrounded by furniture that probably cost more than everything her family owned. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below, lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the planet, beyond the stars she could see, was Earth. Was home. Was her mom and Tommy, who had no idea what was happening to her right now. She sat on the floor because the fancy furniture seemed too nice to touch with her dirty clothes. She put her head in her hands and tried not to cry. Hours passed. Katie must have fallen asleep because she woke up to someone gently shaking her shoulder. She opened her eyes to see an alien woman kneeling beside her. This one looked almost human, except her skin had a soft silver glow and her eyes were completely gold with no whites. "Hello, Katie," the woman said softly. "My name is Lyra. I'm a medical doctor here at the palace. I came to check on you and bring you some food. You must be hungry." Katie realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since her lunch break, which felt like a lifetime ago. Lyra helped her to a table where a tray of food waited. Some of it looked familiar, some of it definitely didn't, but all of it smelled good. "What's going to happen to me?" Katie asked between bites. Lyra sat down across from her. "That's what everyone is trying to figure out. The council has been meeting all night. Lord Dravik has already brought forward 50 new candidates. Generals, scientists, telepaths from the Mindari system, even an ancient prophet who hasn't left his meditation chamber in 200 years. All of them believe they could be the true heir. So they think the crown made a mistake with me? Some do. Others believe the crown never makes mistakes." Lyra leaned forward. "Katie, do you know what the Sentinel crown actually is? What it does?" Katie shook her head. "It's not just a symbol of power. It's alive in a way we don't fully understand. It was created by the first Valorians millions of years ago. It reads something deep inside a person, something beyond physical strength or mental power. It looks for qualities like compassion, selflessness, and the ability to truly care about others. The crown bonds with people who will protect, not dominate. Who will serve, not rule for their own glory. But I'm nobody, Katie said. I fix air conditioners and mop floors. I'm just trying to help my family back home. My mom is sick and my little brother needs. She stopped, feeling stupid for dumping her problems on a stranger. But Lyra smiled. You left your home world. Traveled across the galaxy to work a hard job, all to help your family. That says more about your character than 1,000 battles or scientific achievements. Before Katie could respond, alarms blared through the room. Lyra's communication device lit up. She listened for a moment, then looked at Katie with wide eyes. They're bringing you back to the throne room. All 50 candidates have been tested. She paused. The crown rejected every single one. It stayed completely dark. But the moment you were mentioned in the council chamber, it started glowing again. They want to test it with you present. Katie's heart started racing. What if it glows for me again? Then you may become the most powerful person in 3 galaxies, Lyra said quietly. Whether you want to or not. The guards came for her. This time the walk to the throne room felt different. Word had spread through the palace. Workers and officials lined the corridors watching her pass. Some looked curious, some looked angry, and some looked hopeful. The throne room doors opened. Inside, the council waited along with hundreds of witnesses. The 50 rejected candidates stood to one side, and Katie could feel their eyes burning into her. Lord Dravik stood next to the crown, his arms crossed, clearly unhappy about what was happening. Katie took a step into the room. The crown blazed to life, brighter than before. And this time something else happened. Ancient writing appeared in the air around it, glowing symbols in a language Katie couldn't read. But everyone else could, and she heard gasps throughout the chamber. Lord Valen's voice was barely a whisper. It says, "The chosen protects not with power but with heart." All eyes turned to Katie. The impossible had become undeniable. The crown had chosen, and there was no arguing with thousands of years of tradition and law. The coronation will be in 3 days, Lord Valen announced, though he sounded like the words hurt to say. Katie felt the weight of 3 galaxies settle onto her shoulders. 3 days. She had 3 days before her entire life changed forever. Retried. They moved Katie to chambers that made her previous room look like a closet. Everything was covered in silk and precious metals. The bed was so big she could have fit 10 people in it. Servants kept appearing to offer her things she didn't understand. One brought her something that looked like a glowing fruit. Another tried to dress her in robes that weighed more than she did. Katie sent most of them away. She kept just one outfit that was simple and comfortable. She ate the regular food from the kitchen, not the fancy stuff that smelled weird. And she asked Lyra to stay with her because at least Lyra treated her like a person instead of a fragile piece of glass. The next morning, they told her she had to attend her first council meeting. Katie put on the outfit they had given her, though she felt ridiculous in it. A guard named Cole escorted her to the council chamber. He was Valerian, tall and armored, but he had kind eyes. "Don't worry too much," he whispered as they walked. "Most of them are more scared than you are." "Scared of what?" Katie asked. "Change," Cole said simply. The council chamber was enormous, with a circular table that could seat 50 members. When Katie entered, every conversation stopped. She could feel them judging her with every step she took to her seat at the head of the table. Lord Valen called the meeting to order. "We have much to discuss. The situation at the Krell border has escalated. Their fleet has moved into the neutral zone. We must respond with force." Other council members nodded. One of them, a being made of what looked like living metal, spoke up. "I propose we send the 5th and 7th battle fleets. A show of overwhelming strength will make them retreat." Everyone seemed to agree. Papers were being prepared. Commands were being drafted. Katie watched all of this happening and felt completely lost. She didn't understand half the words they were using. Fleet formations, tactical positions, resource allocations. It was like they were speaking a different language. But something bothered her. Something felt wrong. "Wait," she said quietly. No one heard her. "Wait," she said louder. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. Lord Valen's expression made it clear he thought she should stay quiet and let the adults handle things. "Why are they in the neutral zone?" Katie asked. Lord Valen blinked. "Excuse me?" "The Krell. You said their fleet moved into the neutral zone. What? What do they want?" The council members looked at each other. Finally Lord Dravik spoke. "They're testing our weakness. They want to see if we'll respond. But why now? Katie pressed. Did something happen? Did we do something that upset them? The room was uncomfortable now. A smaller council member with tentacles shuffled some papers. Well, there was the trade dispute 3 months ago. We cut off their access to the medical supplies route through the Hendar system. Medical supplies? Katie leaned forward. Why did we cut them off? They refused to pay the increased tariffs, Lord Valen said impatiently. This is standard procedure. Katie thought about her mom back home, about the medical bills that kept coming, about how scared she felt when they couldn't afford the treatments. So they're not testing our weakness. They're desperate. Their people need medicine and we blocked the only route they had. The silence in the room changed. It wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was thoughtful. Maybe instead of sending warships, we could send someone to talk to them, Katie suggested. Find out what they really need. Maybe work out a better deal on the tariffs. Lord Valen looked like he wanted to argue, but Lady Thane spoke first. When was the last time we actually negotiated with the Krell? No one had an answer. The meeting continued and Katie kept asking questions. Simple questions. Questions that made the council members stop and think about things they had been doing automatically for years. When they discussed closing a mining operation on a small planet, she asked what would happen to the workers who lived there. When they talked about new tax policies, she asked how it would affect families trying to feed their children. By the end of the meeting, Lord Valen looked exhausted. But something else was happening. Some of the council members were looking at Katie differently. Not with contempt anymore, but with something like curiosity. Over the next 2 days, Katie attended more meetings, toured parts of the palace, and tried to learn everything she could. Lyra became her teacher, explaining the history of the Empire and how things worked. Cole taught her about the different species and their cultures, warning her which ones considered eye contact rude and which ones would be offended if she didn't touch their shoulder in greeting. But the most interesting lessons came from just watching people. Katie noticed things others missed because they had stopped paying attention. She saw servants who were overworked and underpaid. She noticed that certain species always got the worst jobs and the least respect. She observed how some council members would talk over others who didn't have fancy titles. One evening, she was walking through a lower level of the palace when she heard crying. She found a young alien child, maybe 6 years old, sitting in a corner. The child's species had blue fur and large ears. Tears were running down her face. Katie sat down next to her. Hey, what's wrong? The child looked up, surprised that anyone had stopped. My mom works in the kitchens. She has to work a double shift again. I haven't seen her in 2 days. Katie felt anger rise in her chest. She stood up and offered her hand. Come with me. She took the child back to the administrative offices, walked right past the secretaries who tried to stop her, and found the person in charge of kitchen scheduling. The woman looked shocked to see Katie there. Why is this child's mother working double shifts for 2 days straight? Katie asked. We're short-staffed, the woman stammered. The quota demands. Change the quota, Katie said simply, and find more staff. No one should have to work so hard they can't see their own child. But the regulations. I'll change the regulations. Katie said it with such certainty that the woman just nodded. Word of that incident spread through the palace faster than light through space. The human girl who was about to be crowned empress had stopped to help a kitchen worker's child. She had walked into an office and demanded change. She had cared about someone nobody else even noticed. That night, Cole came to check on her. You're making waves, he said with a small smile. Is that bad? Katie asked. Depends on who you ask. Some of the council think you're naive. But the regular people? The ones who actually keep this palace running? They're starting to believe the crown knew what it was doing. Katie walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow was her coronation. Tomorrow she would officially become empress of an empire spanning 3 galaxies. The thought terrified her. Katie couldn't sleep. Tomorrow was her coronation, and her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept thinking about everything that could go wrong, about the responsibility she was about to take on, about how much she missed home. Finally, she gave up on sleep and decided to take a walk. The palace gardens at night were beautiful. Strange plants from 100 different worlds glowed softly in the darkness. Water features made peaceful sounds. Katie walked the stone paths, trying to calm her nerves. She was wearing simple clothes, no guards following her. For just a few minutes she wanted to feel normal again. That's when she heard the voices. They were coming from behind a tall hedge near the fountain. Katie started to turn around, not wanting to interrupt anyone, but then she heard her own name. The human will be dead before the crown touches her head, a deep voice said. Katie froze. Are you certain this will work? That was another voice, one Katie recognized. Lord Dravik, the military commander. Completely certain, the first voice replied. It was Lord Valen. I've positioned our people throughout the ceremony hall. The moment she approaches the throne, they'll strike. It will look like an attack from radical protesters. No one will suspect us. Katie's heart was pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. She pressed herself against the hedge, trying not to breathe too loudly. And when the crown goes dark again? A third voice asked. Lady Thane, the crystal woman who Katie thought had been on her side. We'll be ready, Lord Valen said. I have a candidate prepared. My nephew Zoran. He's been training his whole life for this. Once the human is gone, we'll bring him forward. The crown will have no choice. We'll explain that the crown was confused by the human's primitive emotions, but now it can choose properly. The council will ask questions, Lady Thane said, though she didn't sound very worried. Let them ask, Lord Dravik replied. By the time they figure anything out, Zoran will be crowned and we'll be in control. We can return things to the way they should be. The way they've always been. No more of this nonsense about caring for workers or questioning military decisions. The Empire needs strength, not sympathy. They kept talking, working out the final details of their plan. Katie heard enough to understand that at least 6 council members were involved. They had weapons hidden in the ceremony hall. They had bribed some of the guards. Everything was arranged. Katie backed away slowly, trying not to make any sound. When she was far enough away, she ran. Her first thought was to find Cole, to alert the loyal guards to call for help. But as she ran through the empty corridors, another thought hit her. Who could she trust? The conspirators had bribed guards. They had council members on their side. They had been planning this for days, maybe since the moment the crown chose her. If she went to the wrong person, they would just move up their timeline and kill her tonight. Katie made it back to her chambers and locked the door. Her hands were shaking. She could run. She could find a ship, escape back to Earth, forget any of this ever happened. They wanted her gone anyway. Why should she risk her life for an empire that didn't even want her? She thought about her mom, who had worked 3 jobs to keep their family together after Dad left. Her mom never ran from hard things, even when she was tired, even when she was sick. She thought about Tommy, who stood up to bullies at school even though he was small for his age. Her family didn't run when things got tough. And she thought about the little girl with blue fur, crying because she missed her mom. About the kitchen workers who had to work impossible hours. About all the people across 3 galaxies who needed someone who actually cared about them, not someone who just wanted power. Katie took a deep breath and made her decision. She wasn't going to run. But she wasn't going to just tell someone and hope they believed her either. She was going to be smart about this. She opened her communication device and sent a message to Lyra. Need to see you. Urgent. Come alone. Then she sent one to Cole. Emergency. My chambers. Tell no one. They arrived within minutes, both looking worried. Katie locked the door behind them and told them everything she had heard. When she finished, Lyra looked horrified. Cole's face was hard as stone. We need to cancel the coronation, Lyra said immediately. Get you somewhere safe. No, Katie said. If we cancel, they'll know I found out. They'll just try again another time, another way. We need to end this tomorrow. How? Cole asked. If they have people positioned throughout the hall, weapons hidden, guards on their side. The crown, Katie said. Lyra, you told me it's not just a symbol. You said it protects people who truly serve others. What exactly did you mean? Lyra thought for a moment. The old texts say the crown has defensive capabilities. Ancient technology we don't fully understand. But it hasn't been activated in over 1,000 years. The last emperor never needed it. But it might still work? Maybe. If you were in real danger and you truly meant to serve and protect others, not yourself. Lyra paused. But Katie, we can't risk your life on a maybe. Katie spent the rest of the night with Cole and Lyra, making a plan. Cole quietly contacted a few guards he absolutely trusted, people he had served with for decades. Not many, just 5 others who he knew would stay loyal. Lyra researched everything she could find about the crown's defensive systems in the ancient archives. As the sun rose over the palace, Katie watched from her window. This was supposed to be a day of celebration. Instead, it was going to be a day of truth. She was scared, more scared than she had ever been in her life. But she was also angry. Angry that these people thought they could just kill her and go back to ignoring everyone who needed help. Angry that they cared more about power than about doing what was right. She got dressed in the ceremonial robes they had prepared for her. They were heavy and uncomfortable, but they made her look like an empress. She needed to look the part today. She needed to seem confident even though her stomach was doing flips. Cole came to escort her to the ceremony hall. "The team is in position," he whispered. "We'll be watching. At the first sign of trouble." "Let it happen," Katie said. "What?" "Let them make their move. We need everyone to see what they're trying to do. We need proof." She looked at Cole. "Trust me. And trust the crown." The ceremony hall was packed with thousands of beings from across the Empire. Every important person in 3 galaxies had come to witness this historic moment. Katie walked down the long aisle toward the throne. She could see the crown floating above it, already glowing softly. She could also see Lord Valen, Lord Dravik, and Lady Thane sitting in places of honor, watching her with false smiles. The ceremony began. Ancient words were spoken in languages Katie didn't know. Incense burned. Music played. And Katie walked slowly toward the throne, toward the crown, toward the moment when everything would either work out or go terribly wrong. She was 10 steps away when she saw the first assassin move. A figure in guard armor, positioned near a pillar, reaching for something at their belt. Then another. Then 3 more. All around the hall, Lord Valen's people were making their move. Katie kept walking. 5 steps away. The assassins raised their weapons. She heard gasps from the crowd. Heard Cole shouting something. 4 steps. 3 steps. 2. The weapons fired. And the crown exploded with light. It wasn't the soft golden glow from before. This was pure, brilliant energy that filled the entire hall. The weapon's fire hit an invisible shield around Katie and just dissolved like raindrops hitting a hot pan. The crown lifted from its pedestal and settled onto Katie's head, and she felt its power flowing through her. Ancient systems throughout the palace activated. Defense mechanisms that had been sleeping for 1,000 years suddenly woke up. The assassins' weapons sparked and died in their hands. Hidden turrets emerged from the walls, targeting anyone who had shown hostile intent. But they didn't fire. They just held steady, proving who the threats were. Lord Valen jumped to his feet, but Cole and his loyal guards were already moving. They grabbed the council members who had been part of the plot. They secured the assassins. And the entire time, the crown on Katie's head glowed like a star, protecting her, showing everyone that it had chosen correctly. Katie looked at Lord Valen. "Did you really think I would just let you kill me?" The ceremony hall stayed frozen for a long moment. Everyone stared at Katie standing there with the sentinel crown glowing on her head, its ancient power crackling in the air around her. The would-be assassins were on their knees, their weapons useless. Lord Valen, Lord Dravik, and Lady Thane were being held by Cole's guards. The proof of their betrayal was visible to every witness in the room. Katie could have had them executed right there. Ancient law gave her that right. They had tried to murder the chosen ruler of the Empire. The punishment was death, and no one would have questioned it. She could see it in their faces, the fear and the resignation. They knew what was coming. But Katie thought about something her mom used to say when Tommy got in fights at school. Punishment should teach, not destroy. Give people a chance to be better. "I'm not going to kill you," Katie said. Her voice carried through the silent hall. "But you're going to wish I had." She looked at the crowd, at the thousands of beings watching. These people tried to murder me because they were scared. Scared of change. Scared of losing power. Scared that someone might actually care about regular people instead of just the rich and powerful. She turned back to the conspirators. "You're going to spend the next 10 years working in the places you've been ignoring. Lord Valen, you're going to the mining colonies where families work 18-hour days. Lord Dravik, you're going to the border settlements where people live in fear. Lady Thane, you're going to the factory worlds where children breathe toxic air." Lord Valen's face went pale. "You can't." "I can," Katie said simply. "You're going to see what life is really like for the people you were supposed to serve. You're going to work beside them, eat with them, sleep in their homes. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something." She addressed the crowd again. "The coronation will continue. But things are going to change around here." The ceremony finished without any more interruptions. When the crown finally settled completely onto Katie's head, she felt its full power connect with her. It wasn't controlling her or changing who she was. It was more like it was amplifying the things she already cared about. She could sense the Empire now, feel the billions of lives spanning 3 galaxies. It was overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. The first thing Empress Katie Morgan did was create something called the Council of Common Voices. She sent messages to every system in the Empire, asking regular people to elect representatives. Not nobles or military commanders or wealthy merchants. Just ordinary beings who worked regular jobs and understood what real life was like. A farmer from an agricultural world. A teacher from a space station. a factory worker from an industrial planet, a small business owner from a trading hub. The traditional council members hated it. These people have no experience in government, they protested. Neither did I, Katie replied. And look how that turned out. The new council members arrived over the following weeks. Katie made sure they had equal voice in all decisions. And almost immediately things started changing. The farmer pointed out that agricultural subsidies were going to giant corporate farms while small family farms were going bankrupt. The teacher explained how education funding was being cut in poor systems while rich worlds built fancy academies. The factory worker talked about safety violations that everyone had been ignoring for years. Problems that had been invisible to the traditional council suddenly became impossible to ignore. Katie's second major act was to visit the Krell border herself. She took one small ship with Cole and Lyra, leaving the battle fleets behind. The Krell were shocked when the new empress of the Valerian Empire showed up asking to talk. She sat down with their leaders in a simple meeting room, not a grand palace. "I heard you need medical supplies," she said. "Tell me what happened." The Krell leader, an elderly being with scarred armor and tired eyes, explained. His people had been hit by a plague. Thousands were dying. The medical route through the Hendar system was their only source for the cure. When the tariffs increased, they couldn't afford it anymore. They had moved their fleet into the neutral zone out of desperation, hoping to force negotiations. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" Katie said. The Krell leader laughed bitterly. "The Valerian Empire doesn't help. It trades or it conquers. Those are the only options we've ever seen." Katie felt sad hearing that. The Empire was supposed to protect people, not squeeze them for profit. "That's going to change. I'm removing the tariffs on medical supplies. Actually, I'm removing tariffs on all essential supplies. Food, medicine, basic technology. No one should have to choose between bankruptcy and watching their people die." The Krell leader stared at her. "Why would you do this?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Katie said simply. Word of that meeting spread across the Empire faster than light. The human empress had ended a potential war by actually talking to people and caring about their problems. Other species that had conflicts with the Empire started reaching out, asking if they could talk too. Katie spent months traveling to different worlds, meeting with different species, listening to their problems. She visited the mining colonies where Lord Valen was now working. She saw him there, dirty and exhausted, barely recognizable without his fancy robes. He looked up when he saw her, and she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. She went to factories and farms, schools and hospitals. Everywhere she went, she asked the same question: "What do you need?" And then she actually tried to help. It wasn't always easy. Some problems were too big to fix quickly. Some conflicts had been going on for centuries and couldn't be solved with simple conversations. Katie made mistakes, lots of them. She approved a trade agreement that accidentally hurt small businesses. She appointed someone to an important position who turned out to be corrupt. She misjudged situations and had to backtrack and apologize. But she kept trying. She kept learning. And slowly the Empire started to change. Back at the palace, Lyra became her chief advisor. The doctor had a good heart and a smart mind, and she helped Katie navigate the complicated politics of running an empire. Cole became the head of her personal guard, and he made sure she stayed safe while still being able to meet with regular people. Katie never forgot Earth. She set up a communication channel to talk to her mom and Tommy every week. Her mom was doing better now. The medical bills were paid off. Tommy was growing up, doing well in school, talking about maybe joining the space program someday so he could visit his sister. "Are you happy?" her mom asked during one call. Katie thought about it. "I miss you. I miss home. Sometimes I miss being nobody special, just a girl fixing air conditioners." She smiled. "But I'm doing something important here. I'm helping people. And yeah, I think I'm happy." Years passed. The Empire stabilized. The wars that had been threatening when Katie first arrived never happened. Trade routes reopened. Species that had been enemies for centuries started working together. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems, still conflicts, still people who didn't like the changes. But things were better. One day, a reporter from a media network asked Katie to do an interview. They wanted to know how a human cleaning girl became empress of the greatest empire in the universe. Katie sat in her office, the crown on her head no longer feeling strange or heavy. It felt natural now, like part of her. "The crown didn't choose me because I was special," she said. "It chose me because I remembered something important." "What's that?" the reporter asked. "That every single person matters. The beings working in kitchens and mines and factories. The children who just want to see their parents. The farmers and teachers and builders. They're not just numbers in a report or resources to manage. They're people with hopes and dreams and fears. Katie smiled. The crown chose me because I never forgot that. And I never will. The interview was broadcast across 3 galaxies. Billions of beings watched it. And in homes and workplaces across the Empire, people felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Because their empress didn't protect them with weapons or power or fear. She protected them with something much stronger. She protected them with her heart. And the Sentinel crown, ancient and wise, glowed brighter than it had in 10,000 years. It had chosen well. Katie Morgan, the human girl who once mopped floors and fixed broken machines, had become exactly what the Empire needed. Not a ruler who demanded obedience, but a leader who inspired people to be better. Not a conqueror who took, but a servant who gave. And across the stars, in every corner of the Empire, things slowly became what they always should have been. Fair, kind, and just. The age of the Valerian Empire's greatest ruler had begun. And it had started with a simple question that Katie never stopped asking. What do you need? Retry.